This is an experience that happened back in the 70s. And we had, and I preface this by saying that I grew up in Cleveland. So I'm a woman who knew about snow. We have a lot of snow in Cleveland. At that time, I was living in Bowling Green, Ohio. I had graduated, I was married, and we were living in Bowling Green, which is part of Wood County. And that was the blizzard of 78, I believe. And it was unbelievable. Um, they started forecasting it that these whiteouts were going to be coming. Now, if you know anything about Wood County or Bowling Green, you have small towns in the area, and most of the main roadways that come into these small towns are rural. So corn, during the summer is primarily what you see. And when there isn't corn, that means that there is wind that whips across these roadways. Incredible. So we had a blizzard, and I don't think anyone could have forecasted what was coming. And I wish I could tell you how many feet of snow, except that you couldn't get out your doors. I mean, you were literally blocked in, and someone from the outside had to shovel in order for you to get out. Bowling Green at that time during the blizzard was the worst city in the state of Ohio, and Wood County was the worst county for this particular blizzard. So at the time, I was working for Wood County commissioners, and everybody rallied. The offices, the bottom floor of the courthouse was turned into a rescue center, and volunteers and county employees were working with radios to try to communicate, because people were stranded out in the country and couldn't get in, or didn't have water, had children, didn't have food. So they were getting reports in and then dispatching heavy duty trucks. And at the time, anyone who had a snowmobile was asked to volunteer. So people were actually going out into the country areas, the rural areas, to rescue people. And the one story I particularly remember was a woman who had many children, and there was no heat and there was no power, obviously, and she ripped her front door off. It was wood, and she was going to burn the front door when they arrived with the snowmobiles. So it was incredible, to the point where they actually had our Ohio Guard come in to plow the streets. And we had a wall of snow that divided the main street in Bowling Green. It probably was, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 feet high. And we actually, about the third day, when people started to get out of their houses, we walked downtown. And actually, it was claustrophobic, because everything was white, and then this wall, and you almost felt like you couldn't breathe. So at the time, Chicago was hit very hard, and my husband was actually at a conference in Chicago, and he was driving. And I can't even tell you how he got home, but the front of his car was completely smashed, because he was trying to drive through snow that had, been packed, and very, very bad. So he made it home, and then both of us went over to volunteer in the basement of the courthouse. And it was really wonderful to see an entire community be of service, because those who had made sure that those who didn't were taken care of. And it worked incredibly well. It was very impressive to see that happen. But this was not just any snowfall. This was a blizzard to the degree where if you walked out of your car, if you were stuck on the side of the road, which many of the deaths that occurred in Wood County were people who either pulled off or slid off the road and tried to get out of their car. And they couldn't see because the whiteouts were so bad that they might have been maybe a couple feet from something that could have helped them, but they couldn't see it. And people were found dead, like, a little ways from their car. So we lost a lot of people that way, and it was just tragic. And, it took, I can't tell you how long it took, but probably over a month before things were normal. Where do you put all this snow? And then think about, you're a college kid. So we heard these crazy stories, of course. What do you do when you're in college and there's a crisis? You indulge in alcoholic beverages. So consequently, there was a lot of after effects of the alcohol, and the cleaning staff, once they were brought in, faced enormous tasks because things were pretty bad. But, people from other parts of the state, especially if their children were in school and you didn't have power and your phone lines were down, no one knew how you were or what was going on. So it was a time of really kind of very scary, and you didn't have water either. I mean, so you couldn't do anything. You had to eat whatever was in the house that didn't need to really be cooked. We had actually walked over to a neighbor's, and she had, before the blizzard, had prepared a turkey, believe it or not. So we had turkey and stuffing. But you couldn't, at least you could keep food cold so you could put it outside. But that was the story. And we were written up, statewide for what had happened to us.
Yeah.
And
sounds like, too, the resilience of the neighborhood, of the city, the fact that, you even said your husband's car got smashed when he was trying. But once you got home, you're like, let's go down to the courthouse or wherever it was to help other people. And it sounds like there was a real sense of community where we're all in this together.
Well, and it was amazing. You didn't realize, here you are in Bowling Green, Ohio, so you really, we always had snow. And as a matter of fact, you learned when you were a student that you never took an early morning class because it was so cold up there. And again, the wind was always the problem, and that the wind is what impacted this blizzard. It was just terrible. And so you really didn't think about, you think of snowmobiles, maybe Colorado, some of the places where you go skiing. But because it's rural community and flat, everyone had snowmobiles. So there were a lot of them. And people just came in and brought their snowmobiles and said, where do I go? So that was pretty amazing right there, is that, it wasn't just city vehicles that could maybe try to get through the snow, but you had these rescue missions from snowmobiles. And we had head of real estate companies, big developers. They are all out there, and they really worked hard. It was below zero. So being out in that weather for any amount of time was quite dangerous. And that was another factor of it in trying to get to people to bring them help, was, you just couldn't be out there very long.